So thriving in chaos is not easy, right? That can take a toll. How do you coordinate chaos when leading through large and challenging projects?
We come from, or at least my division that I started managing and developing. We work with contractors on means and methods, sometimes delegated items that go on projects of all sizes. So it's almost like you catch the car while it's driving 60 miles an hour. So you have to jump in and get acclimated quick. Now, so that project's got its own ebb, its own flow, things moving around, a lot of action. So we can call that the project's own regular kind of chaos. Then, I don't know about you, but most of us have hundreds of other projects going on at the same time.
Complex engineering projects can feel like pure chaos. But what if the real path to success is learning how to thrive in that chaos? When every discipline, deadline, and decision is moving at once, the leaders who rise are the ones who guide their teams with trust, confidence, and even when a plan isn't perfect. In this episode, we're joined by Robert Naples, PE, president of Innova Technologies, Inc., who spent nearly 2 decades leading multidisciplinary engineering teams through uncertainty. We'll discuss how he coordinates chaos on large-scale projects, why he believes leaders must lead first, manage second, and the practical ways he builds trust with diverse project teams. If you're responsible for guiding people through complexity and want your teams to feel empowered rather than overwhelmed, this conversation will give you the mindset shifts and strategies you can apply right away. Before we jump in, I do want to tell you about something that's tailor-made for project managers in the AEC industry. It's called AEC PM Connect, and it's the event designed for PMs who want to level up how they deliver projects, communicate with teams, and lead with confidence, all through practical, real-world strategies and tools. And here's the most exciting part. At the next event in June 2016, AEC PM Connect will also host the AEC PM Awards, which will recognize professionals who lead with purpose and deliver measurable results. Just imagine if someone from your firm was named AEC PM of the Year. That kind of recognition can boost your people, your culture, and your firm's reputation in a big way. The event will take place on June 10th, 2026 at the Forest Gate Country Club in New Jersey. You can register now at aecpmconnect.com. And if you want to nominate someone for the awards, head on over to aecpmawards.com to download the nomination guide. I'm your host, Fiona Johan, and this is the AEC Project Management Podcast. Let's jump right in. Robert, thank you so much for joining us today for the PM podcast.
Thanks for having me, Fiona. Appreciate being here.
Absolutely. We're excited to hear from you. We thought we could start with a little bit about you sharing about your journey to becoming president of Innova Technologies, Inc., and how your background shaped your approach to project management.
Oh, so you want my story? I'll try and tell that.
Absolutely, I do.
I'll try and tell that in less than an hour, okay? So I'm from a middle-class family in Detroit, Michigan. Let's be real, my middle-class family, my father worked in a white-collar position at Ford, so the upper end of the middle-class spectrum there. I still don't know what he did for a living. He wasn't an engineer or anything. But one thing that he did do a lot was he would be managing and something with purchasing or procurement, and he would have to manage some of the warehouses. And he was tireless. He worked all the time to provide for the family. And then when those times when I got to go with him to work just to hang out on a Saturday, he would show me some of the things he was working on. And some of the things he did is he would like rearrange the warehouse to provide a break room for the team. Or one time was a basketball court in the little exercise area so that they had something to do. So one of those lessons that he tried to share that I finally understood is you take care of the people that are working with you and for you. They're the ones that are going to really pull miracles out of the fire for you when you have trouble on a job or at work. So also because of that, I had the fortune to go to a college prep school called the University of Detroit Jesuit High School. That's where I found my affinity for math, science, and some other things like art, cooking. Uh, and from there, I went to engineering school at Michigan Technological University. So that's in the far upper peninsula of Michigan. It's closer to Canada than I was when I was in Detroit. And got a big, tough life education there. Failed my first class there. Had to change majors like most of us had to do. So I was trying to figure out what I was doing. And this whole time of going through school, I was working either for fun or to actually pay for college, working in restaurants and other food service industries. And I always ended up gravitating into a management position for some reason. And I took them because you made 15 cents more an hour. So it always helped. But what I look back now and I share with my kids is the things that I do every day today, I had to master when I was working in a Taco Bell, for example, running a line during the drunk rush at 2 a.m. You've got to put a process in place and keep moving. You got to keep your head. So get to the technical stuff. Outside of school, in 1998, I graduated with a bachelor's in civil engineering. My concentration's structural. I just can't say that in certain states. And I joined a firm in Saginaw, Michigan called William A. Kibbe and Associates, and they're still there today. They focused mainly on automotive and industrial work when I was there. So 70% of all their work came from the automotive industry. Foundries, buildings that were built in the roaring 20s, all kinds of the history of structure there, and we had to work on it. And it is a perfect entry point into dealing with change, chaos, all kinds of activity going around. The process line can't stop. That person has to have that chair there for some reason that you don't need to understand. And you just
got to be there.
It's got to be that, and you got to keep adapting and moving. So I called it, drinking from the fire hose analogy. You can't keep up. Well, after a few years there and coupled with my PE, I moved on to a company in Mansfield, Ohio called the Carousel Works Incorporated. They were lost during the COVID era, unfortunately. And the founders, Dan Jones and Art Ritchie, just passed away earlier this year. But at that company, I learned all the facets of how to bring a product to market, which is just, for them, you're doing these massive hand-carved wooden carousels. So the big ones that the kids love riding at the zoos, that's what they did. So by getting that education, I got to learn that sometimes my designs stink. I have a couple broken fingers from trying to install some of my designs that I thought, amazing. AISC says it's perfect. And I got the most important lesson I probably could have from a gentleman named Jim Jones. He was the construction manager. He built everything. He's the one who made the structure and the machine run. He sat me down one day, and I know he was frustrated because I was an energetic, know-it-all kid. And he said, Rob, can you do me one favor? Could you do it, this one job, which is a whole carousel, my way, exactly the way I tell you to do it, just this one time from start to finish. And then when we get back from the install, we'll sit down for 2 weeks, go through every single one of your ideas, because a lot of them, I think, do have merit. And I went, sure, let's do this. And I did. And he taught me his way of doing it, starting with how to sweep the floor. And so I went through every single part of it exactly his way. The only time he told me to stop was when I was welding, because I'm horrible at it. And then after I figured out, oh, this is why you're doing it this way, we talked about it all. I threw out about half of my ideas, and about half of what was left, we said, these are good, let's do it. And everything got better and more efficient. So without that, I probably never would have learned how to listen, truly listen to understand what somebody's trying to communicate, open my eyes and be humble enough to just absorb it like somebody else has value other than me. And then after a couple of years, let's be real, I'm cutting wood, I'm doing all of this stuff. And I started getting the itch to jump back into regular, conventional design services where maybe working on regular construction projects. And ultimately, I met Carlos Banchik and Adriana Banchik, the founders of Innova Technologies. And that was in early 2007. Thought I blew the interview because I pushed back on things. Didn't know if a small 1.5 person firm, because Adriana was still working at another company at the time, could afford to bring me in. But they did. They took the jump. I took one with them. And here we are 18 years later. We've grown from one person, as I like to say, 3 people in a closet down the street, to a firm with over 50 people, 2 buildings here in Vegas, an office in Cairo, people in South America that are working on active projects. I still look back and wonder how the heck we got here. It's like we took a wrong turn in Albuquerque, if you remember the old Bugs Bunny cartoons. On top of that, I'd be remiss if I didn't say one more thing. Carlos and Adriana and Innova, and of course me and my family, have invested heavily in leadership training and coaching and mentoring for me and for some of our other leaders here. And I've been very fortunate for about 15 years to be in a group where I get to sit down with other business executives, now CEOs, and really start to look at businesses and challenges and the struggles we all face, and then work out what works for them. Because it's all about the same stuff when you get to above the technical. And in addition, I get to hear from world experts in their craft in certain areas like leadership, health, organization, the economy. And every single one of these people, there's a nugget we take back and start trying to implement. And most of what I've been able to do over the last several years is a result of all of that kind of amalgamating together. And some of what we're going to talk about today is a direct result of that. But that's, without any of that on that order, I probably wouldn't be here today. Carlos is about to get me luggage, though. I'm on my 18th year.
That's exciting news. I love that story. And what I really heard there was that you had some good mentoring early on that taught you, listen, process, improve the process. And that's so important when we start talking about leadership and growth. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. You're still listening and growing from other leaders. Like you said, once you get above that technical level, and I say this all the time, people are going to get tired of hearing it, is that, your technical skills get you to this certain point, and then you're handed these managerial roles where those technical skills are required and you must know them and you need to know how people do the things. But once you get to a certain level, you need to know how to do the people part of that management. And that's when you start working with others who are in that space and you get to have those conversations, it's just such a lovely network and support. So I'm glad to hear that that's also been true for you.
Oh, absolutely. And they don't teach you any of this at school. They don't put it in the technical manuals. It's just a bunch of black and white stuff. That's why they call us mushrooms, right? And for those of you who don't know what that means, look it up on like Urban Dictionary. You'll get it.
All right. And a little homework assignment for everyone. So one thing you mentioned that was a theme throughout your growth was chaos, from 2 a.m. Taco Bell to installing carousels. So thriving in chaos is not easy, right? That can take a toll. How do you coordinate chaos when leading through large and challenging projects?
I wouldn't ever use the word thrive. Sometimes we use it survive.
Surviving,
navigate.
not thriving.
So I guess the best place to start is to get a good shared definition of chaos, because depending on who you are, you can have a different opinion on what it means. So in the context of this conversation, we come from, or at least my division that I started managing and developing, we work with contractors on means and methods, sometimes delegated items that go on projects of all sizes. So it's almost like you catch the car while it's driving 60 miles an hour. So you have to jump in and get acclimated quick. Now, so that project's got its own ebb, its own flow, things moving around, a lot of action. So we can call that the project's own regular kind of chaos. Then, I don't know about you, but most of us have hundreds of other projects going on at the same time.
You
And
don't
not
get to
a
just
one of them.
focus on one at a time.
You don't get as one. Yeah, we have we have 100 projects to balance, and most of them don't care about the other projects because they have their own thing that they're working on. So we're constantly dealing with this from a multitude of fronts. And then you might understand there's this thing called real life outside of these walls. So we have families, partners, children's interests. Children's, that was a horrible word. And all of that pressure that comes from outside does have to be managed by each one of us and by your company and by your leaders to make sure that the people are in their best position to succeed on these jobs. So when I look at it, I don't look at the word coordination. I don't necessarily think that's the right one. And most of the time we talk about project management, someone says, start with a plan. And from a tactical implementation perspective, that's true. You got to have some idea what you're going to do. From a leadership perspective, I think we need to have a clear understanding of what leadership needs to be in these. And for us, and for me specifically, it's to bring clarity, authenticity, adaptability, and emotional discipline to these projects. If we don't have those four things, and then all the little subsets of them, we don't demonstrate to our team and to the other project teams how you can manage all of this change and all this chaos on all of these large projects. We talked about a plan. I'm sure you've heard this in other interviews that someone will say, Mike Tyson always says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's what these projects can be like. If you're working on Allegiant Stadium, the monorail in Cairo, Madison Square Garden Sphere, these are iconic structures. That's all it is. It's change. This stuff happens for a day. Every day there's a new change. You don't even need to know why. It's just something's going to happen. And what I found is the most effective teams are ones that can bring as a group a level of self-awareness so they understand what drives them and what triggers them most importantly. You have all those little buttons people push and you turn red and you need a minute. Managing those is critical. And then you've got to have that clarity of mission. So if you can stay on that mission, what's the real goal of the project? It's not just finish on time and under budget. Actually, very rarely it is. Madison Square Garden Sphere was to deliver a next generation, the ultimate expression of an audio-visual experience. And if you go through the technical aspects of that, the video and sound of that is revolutionary. So we needed to deliver that. It didn't matter anything else. Another one is always be curious and solution-based. There's always time to find blame later on, but it doesn't matter in the moment. The last two are the ones that I had to learn most recently. One is surrender the outcome that you don't control. And the last is do the uncomfortable work, which really boils down to have tough, effective conversations with people. So that's really what we do when we're leading our scopes and galvanizing bigger teams on these large projects to get through all of these moments.
I love so much of what you just said, and it leads me to, another question for me is, can you share a specific example or project, and maybe you kind of started to allude to one there, where the ability to thrive under that chaos led to a major success, or maybe even just an important lessons learned?
Too many. I have too many lessons to count, and so many of these projects, I'm not sure if I'm going to get sued one day for mentioning it, but let's take two. I can mention a couple things on two. And it really ties into what we've been starting to talk about. So on the Sphere project, we were first engaged by W&W Steel Erectors to come up with some work platforms. So it's on YouTube when you watch Bono do his interview when it was still being built. We started putting work platforms on that precast concrete stadia that's 5 inches thick, and or 6 inches thick in the flat and the tread. And no one wanted to look at it. So we were able to go through and help develop a solution to get work platforms so people could even stage material to go fly 300 feet up in the air inside this giant sphere. Well, we're in the middle of that, and then COVID happens, and everything in the schedule goes into the tumbler. And out comes a new steel erection schedule, a new concrete erection schedule. So these platforms had to be repurposed really quick to hold up cranes and man lifts so that we could access points with people way up in the area. So internally, everyone's going, how do we do this? So it does take a minute for everyone to take a second and go, well, how can we make this happen? What is the big deal? Does it matter if it's just one blob of stuff sitting there or a 50,000-pound boom lift that's got two dudes hanging out 300 feet away? So our client, our leadership here, and some of our really, really talented engineers were able to make that work. And then it's a system of constantly going back to alleviate your concern, just to make sure that you haven't missed anything. So we're always there every day to see if this thing is still working the right way. The other one I want to mention, I don't believe I can mention the exact name of the project, but in Vegas this coming weekend, we have an event that's involving some race cars. In 2023 was the first year of it, and we were fortunately asked to participate in one of the hospitality structures that's on the main drag in front of a world-famous water feature on Las Vegas Boulevard. I'll fast forward to where the real point is. So you're going, everything's crazy. Someone at some point had to say, how are we going to build this? Just listen to me. Let's build it this way, and we'll pivot as we go. And we got into that mode, and we were finally making progress. And it's 2 a.m., and we're issuing drawings. And I had a mistake. I didn't even find the mistake. The people who were fabricating the building couldn't get a couple dimensions to reconcile. Calls me on a Saturday morning. I'm in my garage working on some stuff I was building for my kids. And he just goes on a 9,000 mile an hour rant about, this is wrong. I can't fix it. You got to come up with it. And I'm like, okay. So I went, crap, grab my laptop, I boot up, and I go, and then it all hit me. Like all the notes I took, but are probably on my desk, meeting minutes that people didn't really read. It hit me. I'm like, oh. So it was a 2-inch bust. We changed the thickness of one of the dunnage pads we put into the water by 2 inches. For a very specific reason. I don't need to go into that. And I forgot. So we had a 2-inch bust, a whole row of columns in there. And the owner of the contractor, the construction company that was my client, was in Alaska on a hunting trip. So I had a choice. I could sit there, try and figure it out, slip a piece of paper, and then go, oh. But I picked up the phone and I called him. He was still driving to the cabin. It was a really tough conversation. And the first thing I had to say is, I made a mistake. Explained the mistake. And I told him, this is what I'm going to do tonight. And you should have it fixed, an idea, and then we'll move forward in the morning and I'll call him back. We did all that. We came up with a good answer. All of us pooled together to solve the problem. Who could do what to fix this? Because construction's just going. And I called him. He didn't answer the phone, left him a message. And 2 days later, before he came back, he said, I was still able to sleep. You're fine. That was his goal. He says, Rob, you're here to help me sleep at night. So if I hadn't practiced rigorous authenticity and just said, hey, I'm the one who made a mistake. These people found it. This is what I'm going to do. And not worrying about what he's going to think of me. Am I going to have to pay for the thousands and thousands of dollars for this? Anything like that. Who knows where it would have gone. But by being a leader and bringing that, I was able to, with the team, fix the issue. He still got his vacation. This amazing structure's still up, and no one knew about it on the race day. And that's all that matters.
Absolutely. It sounds like you did a little bit of what I was going to ask you more about is leading first and then managing, right? You put on that leader hat. You let them through the problem, then you managed how that problem was going to play out. Do you have anything else around what that might mean in other situations for people leading first and then manage when working with project teams?
Yeah, real quick. I don't separate leadership and manager. We kind of shoved it all into the role. That most people talk about the tactical implementation of a project manager, the schedules, the filing, everything, delegating, right? And what I realized early on, and I got this acronym from a speaker named Corinne Hancock Scott, and she said, when chaos hits, most people look at it as a problem and they practice their ABCs, which stands for avoid, blame, and complain. And what you really need to do is to be a leader and get them to act like aces. So someone who can assess, who can become creative, and then can execute a plan. And it's always a different person in the room when you have really strong leaders. And I mean humble leaders, emotionally stable leaders, and people who can bring that decisive action when necessary. So if there's 17 different trades that have to be making changes on something, humbly, the structural engineer, ego-wise, may be the best one to say which way to do it. But really, at some point, someone has to say to all of them, this is the direction we're going. I don't care whose idea it was. And then we all go in that direction. So many of us will have those people on our teams or in our companies that are really good at the ABCs. And I think you're going to get to your next question. The leader can emulate and demonstrate the behaviors so that the rest of the team pushes those people out, because we don't need to practice those anymore.
In the AEC industry, skilled project managers are the backbone of success. EMI's AEC PM certification offers tailored training, ongoing support, and exclusive access to premium content that keeps your team sharp and effective. From foundational training to advanced leadership tools, set your team apart with certified growth. Learn more at aecpm.com. That's aecpm.com.
All right, that's so important in building that culture, right? That everyone in the room has a voice and can be a leader in their own right. When their skill set, I always think, I mean, I'm always bouncing back ideas with my team, right? I'm like, well, you're the one in this day in, day out. What do you think our best path forward is? Like, I have my ideas, but before we start there, like, you brought me this problem, you recognized it. What do you think? And like, together we can take that and work from there. And I think it's just so important in that cultural piece, is taking that leadership and knowing it's okay for others to have examples and ideas for these big problems, and then being able to pick one and move on, like you said, not getting stuck in the blame game, which is a tricky one. There's lots of feelings involved, and sometimes that's hard.
Yeah, the hardest part is taking away you're going to get in trouble, you're going to lose your job. I've told somebody the only time you're ever going to be worried about losing your job is when I find out because you were too afraid to bring me your concern, or you tried to hide it. Anything that's really we would probably call unethical or have low, no integrity around you.
One of my first bosses told me, she's like, if you bring me the problem, we're fine. If someone else brings me the problem that you tried to hide, we're not okay. I think
I like that. We should get that on a poster.
Right. And I was like, I totally agree with that. And like, there were times that it came up that you're like, hey, this is a problem and it's my fault and I need help fixing it. And that allows for some honesty and hopefully not big problems, right? If you come with the smaller ones, they don't turn into bigger ones. Around that, how do you build and maintain trust around diverse teams working under these? Obviously, you've got high pressure, tight timelines. What do you do in that space?
Besides bribes and threats, like cookies and screaming?
Dangle a pizza? No.
Dangle a pizza? Yeah. Well, to be serious about it, I think it all starts with authenticity. A few years ago, I was turned on to a speaker named Michael Brody-Waite. He's actually a CEO, and anytime you've scheduled something with the emergency room or urgent care, or sometimes with your own doctor, with that online scheduler, you can thank him. He built a company that does that. But he runs a program now that about how the best leaders approach leadership like addicts approach going through recovery. And that's where you get practicing rigorous authenticity. So if you're not yourself, if you're not genuine, there's just no foundation for trust there. And when you surrender all those outcomes you can't control, because that's another part of that he presented, really you can control so much, but still there's hundreds and thousands of people that are actually making it happen. You can't control every aspect of it. So just let go of it. As long as we get the right answer, and sometimes a right answer that goes in. It's far better than being the one who came up with the idea or being read as the hero. It doesn't matter. I've been on too many projects where someone pats me on the back and I'm like, yeah, but see that guy over there? He got hurt. Or it took 15 people to put that in. Some poor schmuck had to go upstairs and climb a 50-foot ladder with an 80-pound mag drill on their shoulder to go and drill that hole that made me a genius. It's not me. It's an entire team. And then always, it's conversations. I could go and do hours on conversations. But if you're under these tight deadlines, you really need to be able to get in and have an effective conversation. And those don't necessarily need to be fun. I sprinkle fun in. I try and take some of the tension out, but not at the expense of missing the message. If someone's not pulling their weight, that's a problem. If someone's coming, I'm on a project now where someone's coming in, and every time there's an email, it's drama, and another person can't deal with it. So I'm in the middle of these meetings all the time going, okay, well, it's not that big of a deal. This is how it's going to be. All right, let's just roll with it, because we're just starting this project. We got years of other fun problems to help solve. And we need to make sure that no one really is against us, that we can bring all these people together. I hate saying kumbaya, but it's, if we don't keep the whole team together, especially at the beginning, you start siloing things off, and then you don't get the support from everybody else. And that's when projects really do go into the ditch.
I love that you said the silos. I was actually thinking that while you were talking about how we often get trapped in these silos. And one of the things I think project managers can do best is when they're hearing a problem from one silo, knowing immediately who needs to be brought into that conversation to assess and address and come up with a game plan for moving forward. And it's not a blame game, like you said, right? I'm recognizing this is a problem. Person A brought it to me. I think persons G, F, and Z need to be part of the conversation to move it forward. Let's do that. What's the most appropriate platform to do it in? How do we get it done quickly? How do we move forward, right? And that's all those, you want to build that relationships. And ideally, those people start to do it a little bit themselves too, right? Like, I'm recognizing I'm having a problem over here. Instead of it becoming a blame game or someone's upset, they're like, let's tap in this other person that I think is in this other silo that it might be affecting.
Can I add on to what you said? Because what you said was perfect. So I used to do that. I used to say, who else do I got to bring in? And I used to coordinate it. And I've found now I ask that question. I'm thinking this, and this. Who else do we need in here? What am I not seeing? Because we're I don't know if you play any of those like World of Warcraft or Age of Empires types games from way back in the day that are still out, but there's always this thing called fog of war on the map. Like, you can only see so far, and management and leadership on these big projects is exactly like that. No one person has a clear view of everything. Even the project director who's seeing it from a video camera really doesn't know everything that's going on. They're just looking at the progress charts and going through their meetings and their check-ins. So asking those questions and even getting a couple other people in, and for all those people out there listening, sometimes that's not somebody who has a manager or engineer. You might want a field hand in there. You might want the person who's running the crane or the elevator operator, whatever the issue is. You might want someone in there that you're not thinking of, because they either have value because of what they're doing on this job, or a great one is if that person used to run cranes for a living and was the best, crane operator that anyone ever saw, and you've got to do some tricks with a crane, even though they're not running one, bring them in. They've done stuff before that you probably never even thought of. And it's when you bring all those different vantage points in, like you said, that you can really get to an answer quick, decisively, and move on.
I love that. And one of my favorite questions when you have those people say, what do I not know here? Why this isn't making sense? And it's probably because I don't have a piece of the picture. So help me, like you said, fill out that fog for me. Just recognizing that. So I absolutely love all that. And that kind of takes us into what do you identify? I think we kind of started to hit on it, but I'm sure there's so much more we talk about around common risks or breakdowns you see with these multidisciplinary teams and how they need to align. And how do you keep teams moving forward together? You kind of started to touch on it about conversations, but there's always so many silos. How do we, where's the risks that we can I wouldn't say avoid, right? We can't you can't avoid all risks, but what can we mitigate? Where are the breakdowns that we can commonly address?
Well, most of them, I think, rooted in communication at some point, right? I mean, I listened to one of your interviews on YouTube in preparation, and the person you interviewed was talking very well and positively about all these advancements in technology, from BIM, AI, Procore, cell phones. We have a supercomputer in our hands all day, and
it's terrifying sometimes.
It totally is. But what I think behind that is, with all of these tools that we are getting from all aspects of society to make us more effective and efficient, we have de-emphasized FaceTime. So if we're sitting in a room, like right here, I can see you and how you're reacting, and I can play off of you. I don't see the 3 or 4 other people that are probably going to see my name and go, yeah, I'll check him out. See that. That is a problem. Even though we have Teams and video calls, how many times are you on one and there's 500 people there and they're all the circle with their initials, and there's like 2 people with the camera on? You can't engage and connect with these people. And it's through connection that we can start finding ways to break through silos. I tell my engineers, because we're a structural engineering firm, I don't care what your title is. You're on a job. You're an engineer first. I know I say lead first, then manage, but you're still an engineer. If you see something and it doesn't make sense, ask a question. Don't sit there and go, well, this is my role. And that's just within our team. And then I expand it out and say, you're in a meeting with a bunch of everybody else. And this is another one. How many times are you in a meeting and someone's doing this? They're answering an email. They're doing a submittal through Procore, playing a video game. Let's be real, it's probably playing a video game. And they're missing things. So the other part of connection is learning how to truly listen. And I know I touched on that at the very beginning, but I apologize to her. I cannot remember her last name, but her first name's Irina. She's a speaker in a Vistage chair out in Pennsylvania. I think it's Pittsburgh or Philadelphia. It's one of those two. And she talked about listening levels. And the only thing I'll give you to take away from this is, when you're intently listening and you're engaged 100% back and forth, whether it's with one person or in a group, it's exhausting. You leave a half an hour meeting like you were just at the gym running a quarter mile for me, a quarter marathon or something on the treadmill. It's exhausting. And then to do that back to back to back to back to back, it gives you a new appreciation for what counselors go through when they have to sit there and listen to 8, 9, 10 people a day at that level. So my root cause is always that. And I have a story I can share about Allegiant Stadium, but if there's time, I don't want to blow up your whole.
That's totally up to you and your timetable.
Okay. Well, I can go for hours. So connection and communication. So we were the engineer for the big video board that's on the side of Allegiant Stadium that faces the highway. It was not part of the contract that the owner had with the GMP contractors. Totally separate scope. And we were on a design build team to do it. And not to go through all the stuff, but we had all kinds of kickoff meetings. There were all kinds of miscommunications, directions, pivots, everything to pull it off. But looking again at us, we went and coordinated everything we could. And we had everything fabricated, ready to go to site in a week. And I'm driving by the stadium and I had a panic attack. So I called the team and I said, have we gotten the eyebrow model? So it sits inside this eyebrow that protrudes from the building. And because every time I asked, we said, we've been asking for it, but we're doing what we were told. And someone said, no, I still haven't gotten it. So I called everybody and they moved mountains and got us the model. And we had what I can only describe as the most embarrassing clash I have ever seen, where we had fabricated steel that physically couldn't fit in the slot that we had. So again, call your client, explain what's going on. And this is how much connection can help. We all just dropped everything, went there, sat in that person's conference room, and it was a process. Like we looked at where we were, we got real dimensions, we started hand editing all the shop drawings, checked it in Tekla, and then they had a Post-it note, and then they went to the shop and they cut the pieces and re-welded and moved joints. And no one got paid, no one submitted a change order, and the people, like the people who did the enclosure and did the eyebrow, they were there. They were talking about other things that might not be in the model, and we all pulled together because the last thing we wanted was for anyone to have to fire a bunch of people and close their doors, because ultimately we're here to help people eat and feed their families. I have right now 53 families that I have the pleasure and the responsibility of helping feed every day. By bringing in work, and to pull that off, doing that is a testament to having deep connection, building deep relationships with our clients, and then them with their teams and their colleagues. So on these big projects, we all pull together. No one wants to see somebody go out of business because of that kind of a mistake. No one. You can't fix, I wrote a bad contract, but you can all pull together and fix a mistake like that.
I love that. Connection it's so meaningful, all the way back to like the meetings with people's screens off, right? I'm constantly begging people, I'm like, please turn on your screens. If I can do it all day, so can you. And then all the way to sitting in a room together and solving the problem so that, long term, everybody comes out of it okay. I think that really speaks to building those connections, building that community with your networks and your clients. That's irreplaceable. So thank you for sharing that. We have our final question, which we like to ask everyone, which is our PM Pitfalls question. And we want to know from you, Robert, what do you think is the biggest PM pitfall you've identified, and how would you recommend overcoming it or avoiding it for other PMs out there?
Well, there's a lot that's the biggest. To go really quick, it really is understanding the price you're going to be paying. You're going to be paying, your team's going to be paying. Your family and your friends are going to be paying when you get into these jobs, because when all of that stress starts weighing on your shoulders, if you haven't really taken a minute to think about that, then you really haven't thought about how you're going to show up every day and be prepared to be the best leader, the best tactician for management, the best decision maker, everything else, because somewhere there's something inside, a fear, a frustration that you're not going to get out. I can talk about that's kind of knowing yourself, but learning, being curious, getting the FaceTime, kind of summarizing everything. But if you don't sit there and have that conversation with yourself first, and then with your expanding circles of people that you really do care about and are going to support you in this, that is a humongous pitfall. And the fallout and the repercussions are horrible, because I've seen too many friends and colleagues separate from their partners, get divorced time and time again, lose connection with their kids and their friends, sometimes even lose their job because they did not have that conversation with themselves about what it's really going to take out of you and out of your friends and family to pull off a once-in-a-lifetime job.
I think that is so important. We often forget about the whole person, right? And you think society has this contract with 40 hours a week of work in order, but that's not actually how it works out. And especially in these higher risk and higher profile jobs, it's going to take more out of you, and not having those conversations with yourself and those people that you love around you ahead of time can be a huge pitfall. So I'm really glad you brought that human perspective in. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a lovely conversation. I'm very excited for our listeners to be able to gain some insights from you and your journey. I hope that we cross paths again sometime.
I would love to continue the conversation, Fiona. I'd love to know more about what you do outside of this environment.
We can get into that one day. Thank you so much, Robert.
Perfect. Thanks. Have a great day.
Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aecpmpodcast.com. There you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you all the best in your engineering project management endeavors.